Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Yo, welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. As always, thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for sharing this around. Thank you for all the kind messages and the questions that you've left, and also for the topics that you've requested that I get guests on to talk about. And one that consistently comes up, and I totally get it, is talking about AAU. AAU is a big part of basketball coaching, and a lot of you are either AAU coaches, might be thinking about being coaches, or have experience in AAU yourself that you can draw from and reflect on a little bit. And that's what we're going to kind of get into today. What we're going to focus specifically on today in the AAU world is coaching players, specifically those who are looking to be seen, those who are looking to be noticed, and what goes into being a coach in those AAU events or those AAU showcases, and designing game plans, designing strategies, doing in-game coaching that allows your guys or girls to be seen, to be noticed, and get the right attention on them. So if you're an AAU coach who's, looking to really get your players noticed, if you're looking to get kind of into the AAU coaching and this is something that you're into, definitely give this a listen, because this would be a good conversation. And as I always say, I learn a lot with these AAU conversations because I'm not too involved in AAU myself. So I'm going to be learning a lot right along with this. As I was joking with my guest, he's got about 15 different coaching titles, from assistant middle school basketball coach. He's a skills trainer and creator of Organic Hoops Basketball, and also a basketball coach for the Missouri Flight. Busy man, and I'm very happy I have him on today. My guest today is Coach Kyran Dixon. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Doing well, man. Thank you for having me.
One more time, Coach. I didn't quite catch that. If you get that one more time for me. How are things going?
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
There we go. Doing well, man. Thank you for having me on.
So before we get into this, Coach, let's go ahead and get started with your coaching journey. Where's the game of basketball taking you? Where's your coaching taking you? And how did you get to all these different stops that you're at right now? How'd you even find time to do all these different things?
Man, so as you said, my name is Kyran Dixon. I'm a 24-year-old college student, actually. So
wow,
I started playing the game when I was 11 on accident. So my mom dropped me off for a football camp. I was actually really starting to get in the football period, but drops me off at this football camp, and I'm at the gym and I'm looking around, nobody's there. And then one of the kids that was supposed to be there as well comes up to me. He's like, "Yo, this football camp just got canceled for the entire summer." So, it was in the month of June. So of course you got team camps going on. So what ends up happening is I just hopped in the team camp. That was the first time I'd ever touched the ball. So that was a pretty crazy introduction to basketball, but I ended up falling in love with it. My older siblings played, so they had always been trying to get me to play, but I just didn't like it up until that time. And so after that, got into it, fell in love with it, played middle school, played high school under the same coach as Jeremy Dressler, actually. So that's
Coach.
Yes, sir. So me and Dressler had the same coach. I wasn't as successful as Dressler, but it was a good time under him. Learned a lot. He's actually definitely one of the people that inspired me to be a coach myself. So after I graduated there, started coaching about 2 years after I graduated in 2016 with various club teams. One of them my nephew was playing on, and I just kind of wanted to be around the game. So kind of just hopped on there as a little assistant. That was my first kind of experience with anything club-like. And then ended up helping a 8th grade girls team that was also, just put together the team and got to the local courts, and was playing on there, and I was an assistant on there for a little bit. And then my first experience with AAU came a couple years after that with this team called the Missouri Tar Heels. So a lot of those kids, I started out with them when they were in 6th grade going into 7th. And then we had one kid that was playing up 5th grade going into 6th. And so now they're all sophomores and freshmen, and a lot of them have a chance to play varsity this year. So that's pretty cool. And so after my stint with the Tar Heels, coached with them about 2.5 years, and then met Dale Lambert. Well, not met him, but kind of got in contact. And he asked me if I wanted to coach with the Missouri Flight, and I jumped on that opportunity. Kind of started more as a skills trainer at first because that was what I was kind of getting more into. And then after that, summer was coming up. I think it was in like April. He was like, "You want to coach a 15s team?" I'm like, "You know what? let me go ahead." So I've been on there ever since, just growing with the brand.
You got some time management tips for us here? Because I don't even know what your schedule could look like. How do you balance? How do you go about being able to give your attention to all those things and be able to kind of schedule it out? Your schedule must look like something else.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, man. For a long time, for the first, especially with the Tar Heels. So when about that second year, my skills training had kind of started to take off, and I had a professional that was going to be home for the summer hit me up. And so I would train with him four times out the week, 4 or 5 times out the week, and he lived an hour away. So I would go with one of my girls in the morning. I'd skills train her from 8 to 9. After that, from 9 to 10, I'd make that hour drive, get there by 10. We'd go from 10 to 12, come back. Then I would do my practices.
Wow.
After that. And then after the practices was done, I'd have my last guy, my last little professional college guy come up, and we would work out from about 6 to 8. And then I'd be done for the night. So really just you got to jam pack it together. Of course, you make some time for yourself to get some lunch and whatnot. So just got to be quick about things, man. But if you stay moving, you'll be all right. Don't sit down for too long. You ain't gonna want to do nothing.
Now I'm worried because we just talked about you kind of have a weekend off. I don't know how that's going to treat you now.
So hey, funny thing about that is I already done 2 skills training sessions today.
You'll find a way to fill the time. You'll find a way to keep yourself busy. That's funny.
100%.
AAU looks really different, I know, from state to state, and even from area to area within that state. So I'm just curious, before we really get into this, when you think about the way that AAU is being run in your area or within the state of Missouri itself, what are some thoughts you have about it? Are there things that you really like about it? Is there anything that you see that might want to be done differently? Just kind of what's the situation you feel like AAU is in your area and in your state?
Man, so I really feel like specifically in Southwest Missouri, I think AAU is pretty up and coming. There's a lot of good teams around here, and a couple powerhouses. Now there's a bunch of programs, of course. There's a million different teams, and that's kind of one of the issues. If these kids were more centralized, I think it would be a lot better for a lot of them, especially trying to get on, teams that don't go as many places. So in terms of us talking about, how you get noticed, I think the biggest thing is being at the right events with the right teams. And that plays a huge part in it. So, but for the most part, I think there's a lot of firepower and talent. One thing the kids got to understand with AAU is at that higher level, it's very cutthroat. You gotta be very, very, skilled in some ways and smart in others. Just who you're playing with, where y'all are playing, and you got to understand the level of competition that you're playing against is probably going to be a lot different than your school team. So you better bring it. That's definitely one thing.
And I'm sure that some of your guys, especially those younger guys who go into the program, they might not realize, especially compared to their school team, like what it's actually like and how things are going down. It sounds pretty competitive over there.
100%. So, man, I think that's just the biggest thing. And you got kids competing. And the thing about it is, it's funny. Dale always jokes with me. He says, man, July is like free agency. It gets real competitive for these kids, and a lot of them are jumping from team to team, which isn't a bad thing. You got to find the best situation for yourself. But I've definitely seen a lot of cutthroat stuff this year.
Oh, well, then let me ask you then, how do you deal with that? Like, do you deal with situations of people looking to like take your guys from you, or is that something that's happening, or not something that you've dealt with too much?
Man, so funny with the one kid that had played up on Tar Heels years ago. He actually had got snatched up. We had a situation where a lot of so in sixth grade, they don't play school ball up here. I don't know if it's like that where you're at, but in sixth grade they don't play school ball. So those kids just play AAU the whole year.
Wow.
And
Okay.
what happened was he was playing up, and that team was very, very talented. So it was good for him. He's a very talented kid, but he was having to work his butt off playing with kids that was a year older and also very skilled. And what happened was when they started playing school ball, well, he had to kind of fill in and play with kids his own age.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so what happened then was he was offered for sure a better situation. He's done better. He's done really good with the program he was with. But that's definitely that happens all the time. And the older you get, the more that stuff happens. We had one kid that was playing with our 17s Adidas earlier this year, and he got an opportunity to play for Bradley Beal's AAU team. And it's like, well, what can you
Well,
do, man?
okay.
What can you do,
I think I wouldn't mind that so much. Sometimes like other situations that might bother me more, that sort of situation. Okay. All right. Well, sure.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, you always have sometimes that's better for your team dynamic because it gives other kids opportunities, whether they was on your team prior or if it gives a kid that was thinking about making that jump to our program an opportunity to really make that jump and then have an impact with us. So we've benefited from a lot of that kind of stuff at times, but also it hurts.
Yeah, it's never fun, right? It's never a fun situation to be in.
Man, but it's all about the kids at the end of the day, man. So wherever the best situation and fit for them is, you gotta stick with them and show them the love, man. I think that's
Mhm.
the biggest part of coaching.
No, I like that a lot. That's good. Getting into it for the right reasons. That's awesome. So
Right.
when you think about your going into your game planning when it comes to these events and these showcases and the way that you develop and design your coaching, what kind of goes into that when it comes to game plan and designing things that are going to help make sure that you're getting your guys noticed and getting the right attention on them?
So I think the biggest thing is probably just I try to teach good basketball um first and foremost before anything. So you got to make the right reads and know what to do in certain situations. So I run a dribble drive. I'm a big dribble drive guy. And funny thing, I've listened to the podcast, multiple podcasts, your podcast and other ones on dribble drive, just trying to really figure out how to perfect the system. But that's an offense that I really think that you have a chance to just showcase good basketball is dribble, kick it to the right person, or is dribble and score, or is dribble, kick it to the right person and they hit the shot, or you keep the flow going. And I think that gives kids a good opportunity to showcase their skills. Even your big man, even if you have a big man that's gonna be down there in that spot opposite the block, they show their ability to catch and finish and all sorts of other things. So I think just preparing it first starts in practice, of course.
Mhm.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why Dale brought me on is because of my skill development ability. So I think you develop the skill first, and then you show them, how to do this or when to do this. And, you get to know your players, of course. You got to put them in I really pride myself in putting players in positions where they can succeed, and not places where they'll be more uncomfortable. So if I got a kid that's, he really likes to shoot the three, like, for example, my point guard this year, my 15U, very good ball handler. You can't take the ball from him. He can get in the paint whenever. But he would, of course, like to score, try to score a lot.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him, you're going to be way better as a ball mover, somebody that can use your handle, because he ain't nothing but 5'2".
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, you can finish at the rim and you can shoot, you can do all that, but we got four guys that can shoot the ball pretty well. It's like you're going to look a lot better if you can show that you can distribute and score and run an offense effectively. So I made sure that was his job and put my shooters around him and made sure that they caught and shot the ball efficiently or didn't force anything too much. And, we kind of just worked through that. And it was a lot better for kids.
Did you have to do a buy-in process of a kid like that when he wants to get the bucket in? You're telling him, hey, this is the system we're working in. We got shooters around you. Or what was that like? What was that conversation like with him?
The buy-in is huge, especially so our last tournament, we went undefeated. He had a fractured finger, and Doc told him he wasn't supposed to play for, 3 or 4 weeks, but he's just begging and begging. He's like, it doesn't hurt. It feels all right. It's like, all right, man. So I'll let you play, but understand that your shooting hand is injured.
Yeah.
You're going to be very much more effective getting these other guys going. And that was kind of an ongoing battle with him the whole year. But we played our best basketball undoubtedly when he was doing that. So when they see the results, it makes that buy-in a lot easier. And you got to get their trust, of course.
And with that, right, you got to get your trust, and there's the team itself has to kind of come together. And I know just from talking to previous guests and talking to other people, I know that gym time and practice time can be pretty limited in an AAU setting. So how much practice time do you got, and how do you kind of get these players to kind of buy in and work as one, especially in a system like a dribble drive, which does take a lot of cohesion and a lot of teamwork to really get down?
So the biggest thing, and this is kind of another time management thing that I've gotten a lot better with flight, is so we always have 2 teams at practices. So one thing I was able to do with my 15 specifically, they got at one point in time, it was 3 practices a week. So which is, it doesn't seem like a whole lot. But there's a lot of teams out there where they got their 2 hours on this day because they got 3 kids coming from 2 hours away or this or that, and that's the only day they can make it. So we would go on Tuesdays with the other 15s group, and then we would go on Wednesdays with my 14U. So that would give me an opportunity for my 15s to beat up on some little kids and my 14s to also experience, a lot more physicality and roughness and really have to be tough. So that was the biggest way I found to maximize practice time. And I would, especially on Wednesdays, and then later on in the year when I got, because I didn't start out coaching the 17s team this entire season. I had them for the month of July. So when I got them in July, I started having my 15s practice with my 17s, and my 14s would practice with the other 14s team. So we got about 2 teams per age group. And so that's kind of where in those practices, they only have me. Normally we have another coach, but on these practices, I kind of organize them by myself. So they'd only have me around. And I'm really just harping down on these type of things. And then also just doing little team building things at the beginning of practice. Like one time I let them play ultimate Frisbee. And so that's fun. Yeah, you throw in a little something like that. And for one, in a game like ultimate Frisbee, they got to pass to everybody. Normally you see kids, they don't want to pass to certain teammates for whatever reason. Well, they're forced to in this kind of environment, and that translates into the game later on. So that was kind of how I dealt with that.
And when you have players even just kind of taking it a step back who are looking to even join your team in the first place, is that something that you had to have kind of a conversation with the guys about, like, hey, like, you might have your own like personal goals and personal reasons why you want to be on this team, but you have to make sure that you're able to be a team player and work within what we're trying to do as a team? Did you have to like kind of make sure that these players were like a right fit for your program beforehand, or what was that kind of like?
And so a lot of it, and I'll keep harping down on my point guard because me and him, I've known him for a while, but the biggest thing, because he started out playing this year with another team, and I kind of had to do the snatch up and try to get him from another team, and part of it when he got on, he hadn't been playing with these guys at all, and he just didn't trust them. And I had to harp on him big time. Like, they trust you with their life. Like, you have to trust them. When they're open, you got to pass them the ball. You can't try to do this on your own. That's going to make everybody better. And I've had conversations with other kids and the whole team about just buying into kind of a brotherhood. And I had listened to the podcast. I forget the coach's name, but he talked about the huddle thing and where he has them huddle. And that was a huge part, I believe, in our success in July, because it just made these dudes trust and buy into the system that we're putting in with each other. By the time I got, them really in the groove of huddling, I'm kind of listening in, and they're like, man, we got to run the dribble drive. We got to do this. They're just repeating what I've been saying to each other. And that's when you can kind of see, okay, finally they're starting to trust each other. We've got that buy-in. We've got them past that little bridge of trying to do their own thing, because you can try to do your own thing. It's just not going to work out for anybody.
Well,
most of the time.
Well, like in a system like the dribble drive in particular, like that's a system where if it's run well, like everybody's going to look good out of it. Everyone's going to shine.
Yep.
Everyone's going to look like they're doing well. Like you almost give up, I would say, in a sense, like you feel like maybe you're giving up a little bit in terms of maybe like, okay, you're not just going to be able to do individual and do everything you want. You give up that little, but the return on that is going to be so much greater, because everyone, I feel like, just looks better, and individually you look better being in that system when it's done well.
100%, because at the end, not even at the end, throughout the year, this team, my 15s could shoot the lights out the ball. So we got 5 kids that could really shoot that thing, and but you're only going to be able to showcase that if you don't have everybody playing ISO. It has to be run correctly. We have to find the double gaps and the triple gaps and attack them, and then if they cut them off, we have to make the right plays from there. And if you're doing that, you're showing coaches your ability to not only make the right play, but when you're on the receiving end of those passes or moving off the ball off a back door or things like that, well, now you're showing that you can do all that other stuff as well. And then you just got to come on the defensive end and show you can guard. So yeah. It makes everybody's life pretty easy if you're doing it right. And there's still time for that one-on-one, of course, when you have a mismatch. And I make sure as a coach, when I see that, I give them that opportunity. But if they're screwing up in that type of sense, and I'm just going to take that right away. That's running the system.
I'm imagining if I'm like a college coach, or if I'm somebody who's looking at like an AAU event, or looking at these different like showcases and things that are going on, I imagine if I'm a coach and I'm thinking, okay, I know that, this guy is a shooter and he's a really good shooter. If I'm a coach, especially a college coach, I really don't care like about their 3-point ability when it's, one-on-one in isolation against somebody, because as a college coach, I imagine I'm not running anything like that anyway. So it doesn't mean a whole lot to me unless I can see that player do what they need to do in the context of an offense that an actual college team might actually run.
Right. And that's kind of what I try to tell kids a lot of the time. I had to pull them in the huddles and say, ain't none of us 6'8", 250 dunking the ball crazy. Y'all are going to have to show that you're good basketball players. Mm-hmm. If you're not a solid, 20 to 30 point guy in these AAU events scoring off an ISO ball, is not going to be your best look.
And then I imagine some cases might work against you too, because it's like what's this guy trying to do here? Like, doesn't trust his teammates, right? And all that thing. And these might be things, and you can speak to this too, that your players might not even think about, that like the way that they're coming off or the way they act by they're doing certain things. But it's like, hey, this is what, from the outside looking in, this is what other people are going to think about you if you play a certain way. I'm sure that maybe you've had players who aren't even aware of that.
Yeah, on the top, so on the 17s level, got a kid that could, and he only got to play for me for 3 games this year, but he could score the heck out the ball. I mean, we're talking isolation. He ain't nothing but probably 5'10", but he's out here dribble post up fadeaways, and he's got the 3 ball off the dribble. He can shoot it off the catch. He can drive when he wants to. don't do it enough. But the thing about it is, we went 2-2. Could have gone 3-1, lost a close one to a team we were definitely better than. But after a while, when you're just isoing the ball, 2 people can key in pretty easily on one person. I'm sure we've all seen that, and you're working against the advantage when you're trying to play 1v5 instead of playing in the system and then attacking an opening when it's given to you in an advantage situation. So that's the thing, and I mean, like, if you're not James Harden, it's not going, You got to remind kids of that a lot of the time.
No, I 100% agree with that. Now, this question is, your program is really successful. So it sounds like you kind of have the best of both worlds. But when it comes to some in-game coaching and it comes to some decision making that you're making, what do you kind of balance as a coach, like trying to win and have the most successful program and product you can have on the court versus also making sure that you're getting your guys noticed and making sure that you're putting them in the best position they can to be getting the attention that you might want them to have and they might want to have? How do you kind of balance like trying to have on the success court, but also making sure you get some of your players individually noticed as well?
So the first thing first is, you got to be in the right events. Of course, we talked about that a little bit. And then it's just kind of taking opportunity, and you definitely have to, I can't coach a game. For one, I never sit down, so I'm always standing up.
You and me both.
I'm a high energy guy. There was one time, my mom came to watch me coach, and it was early in the career. I think we was getting blown out by 20, 30 points, and I just decided to sit down. I seen other coaches do it. I'm like, you know what? This is my time. So moms let me know after that game, don't never do that again.
That was the last time, huh?
Yeah, that was the last time I ever sat down. So first is, getting in the right events and being a high energy guy. Gotta be on that sideline active, and you can't let the game get away from them. You gotta know what to do. I listened to that podcast about timeout situations, took a lot from it. And, when the things get rough, you got to know when to stop the bleeding a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time in AAU, that's when the team goes on probably a 7-0 run,
It can happen quick.
It can happen quick. And then, that 7, if you don't stop the bleeding, that 7 points turns into a momentum swing where they up by 20 something in the first half and the game's gotten away completely. So you got to know when to stop the bleeding when that stuff's kind of going on. And you got to know, you have to have a couple sets, I'm sure. And of course that starts in practice, but you got to have a couple sets of things you can draw up or tell them for your players to put them in good positions to turn things around. So this past weekend, played a team, and it was a shootout. It was a back and forth, but then I started calling out, a couple sets after I kind of realized how they were playing it for my shooter. And we got the ball to him every time. He ends up hitting 3 threes in a row to swing the tide. And then we just kind of took control of the game. So you got to know when to make those decisions. And like you said, that's gonna, coach sees him doing that, they're gonna kind of turn their head, and that's kind of where you get your individual players noticed. But I let kids know everybody's gonna have their turn. Your game will come, but we got to focus on and back to the winning, focusing on winning versus kind of just coaching up. At the 14 and 15U level, you got a lot of wiggle room to develop and let kids make those mistakes in those times. Yeah. As you get to the 17U level, you kind of lose that luxury because coaches are not coming to see you go 0-4.
Imagine. Yeah.
And, they're looking at who's in the highest pool. They're looking at who's been winning a lot of games, and they're checking the coverages on the social media. So if you're on the bad end of that at 17, it's not going to be too much coverage for you. Mm-hmm. But of course, at 14 and 15, you have a lot more luxury to kind of, develop kids and put your players that need that struggle in a little bit more and have to figure out how to come out of it. If you develop and do your job, you'll win a lot of games. You'll win some games, but you'll lose some, and you'll have some lessons learned at that lower level.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point in terms of just being just coaching in general about how if you as a coach, you got to make sure that obviously you're trying to win, you're trying to be successful, and then as you mentioned, also trying to make sure that you're thinking of ways to put individual players in the best spot possible. So as a coach in one of these like AAU events, there's a lot of eyes on you. You got to make sure that you're on point mentally and everything to make sure that you have things that keep, the ship together and make sure like, okay, they're doing this. I got to make sure I can counter this and make sure that, this is happening to make sure things are going because, and I'll let you speak to this. I imagine, at some point, if it's a big blowout, like the focus might not be as good anymore. And a lot of people might not be paying attention or as dialed in as they need to be. So, and I'm sure as a coach, you got to make sure that these games, you can't let them get away from you because once they get away from you, there's a lot of, there might not be as much value in it anymore. At least that's kind of what I think, but I'll let you speak on that.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, like, the biggest problem that I've seen at the lower level, so I'm talking, 15s and down, whenever they're getting blown out, they stop competing. And they're building bad habits that way. A lot of the time, when I'm, in that position, sometimes I just got to call a timeout just to get in them and tell them, look, I don't care about the score. Like, we still got 18 minutes or 8 minutes or however long in this half, and y'all got to fight every single possession. Like, yeah, we're down. I had to tell my 8th grade this past weekend. It's like, yeah, we're down. I'm not worried about that we're down. I'm worried about that y'all are, that y'all not trying no more. Don't be defeated. You gotta keep going because as the levels get up, then that's the biggest difference between, the 15, 14, and then 16 and 17 level is those kids have kind of learned that lesson. Like, well, I got eyes on me. There's a lot of coaches watching. We may be getting blown out, but can't stop playing hard because this dude might still, be looking at me. So the 15s, they kind of know that ain't nobody looking. The 14s know that nobody's really up there besides the parents. So they'll start getting a little whiny, and you just got to really get in them and tell them like it's the competition part that matters, going all out the entire time.
Well, and if you learn that at 14 and 15, then you never, if you're always playing with that motor of like competitiveness and not worrying about the score, then it's not going to be a thing that is you don't have to worry about that switch ever being turned off if it's like not even in your possibility. If you always have that motor going, you're not really going to be like, oh, like, should I like stop trying or should I, can I slack a little? It's like, if that's instilled in you at a young age, it's not even going to be a question. And I think that probably stands out too. If like, a game, maybe it is getting away from you, but you notice that like, they notice that there's that player. It's like, man, he's still going like it's, 0-0 right now.
Right. And that's big time at the older levels, man. And if you figure that out when you're younger, it's only going to help you. And I've always been that kind of kid. I don't know how to not go hard. A lot of the time it was when I was a player and still, when I'm up in men's leagues or doing this and that, I'm not stopping. And that's it. Don't matter if I'm up or down, I'm gonna keep going as hard as I can. So it's really teaching the younger guys that a lot of the time. Yeah, and it'll stick with them as they get older.
And I remember, when I was coaching, middle school, 13, 14-year-olds in particular, having to do kind of like you said, call those timeouts and be like, I knew what the score was. We could even be up sometimes, up by 20 or, down by 20, or whatever the case may be, and be like, look, it's just 0-0 right now. So for these next 4 minutes, what's the score going to be if it, we called it like 0-0 right now? And are we going to win these next 4 minutes sort of thing?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
that's good.
Like you said, if you don't, it can get away. And then you as a coach, it's like, then you're maybe don't look like they're not as engaged. Like you don't look as engaged. Like, what are we doing at this point? Why am I here? sort of thing. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. So I want to kind of redirect some specific attention to it, which is what do you and your program kind of do specifically for some team building to make sure that, your team is all in it for each other and they're not playing selfishly. But they're playing kind of together and not just playing together, but also actively wanting each other to be successful as well.
So I think, and this took us a long time to get down, but we got it down at the right, we got it down at the right moment. At the end of the year, the last AAU tournament, they figured it out. So a lot of the time, it's just getting them kids. So I instilled the huddle thing, and I would tell them to go huddle up and then you talk to me. And a lot of the time, In practice, I would say when I got the 15s pitted against the 17s, I'd say, and 17s would be just whooping them. I'd say, all right, 17s, y'all huddle, 15s, y'all huddle and figure it out before I put y'all on the line.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time then when they're in the huddle, they're having those conversations and dialogues on what they need to do and figure out. And at the end, always got the big huddle in, and I'm just reinforcing because a lot of the time they would lose due to trying to do it on their own. Whenever the 15s play with each other and play through the system, they figure it out and it works. And it just goes back to that. When you're trying to do your own thing, it's not working. But when you're working with your brothers, it's a lot easier, and you'll see a lot more success from that. You know what he's good at. You gotta figure out how to talk to people. Point guard, little dude. He got a mouth on him, man. So having to remind him a lot of the time, like, hey, look, I'm just as upset with him about that play as you are, but you can't talk to him in that way.
Yeah,
you gotta tell him like this. If he took a bad shot, you gotta say, look, man, that's not a horrible shot, but we can get a better one. And it's as simple as that. You can't cuss him out because he shot the ball and you was open.
Yeah.
You gotta have that. You gotta have that dialogue, and y'all gotta talk to each other. I think the other coach had said it like this. He's like, you fight with your family, yes, but if somebody else try to fight your family, you're gonna step for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really instilling that. So by the time we had kind of got that down, this weekend I got all the boys hanging out as a team, and I pulled up on them at the hotel, and this is when I kind of really knew. We went 2-0 on the day, had no other games, had 2 more to go tomorrow. So we got a whole bunch of free time. I think our last game was at like 5 something. So, they got from 7 to whenever to kind of hang out with each other. And so I pulled up on them at the hotel, and they were all in the pool. One of the other players from our 16s lets me in the pool, and it's just all 7 of my players in the pool just having a blast.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was like, okay, y'all kind of figured it out. And they was being rambunctious as boys are. They was definitely looking, as my girlfriend said, it was so funny. She said, wow, they actually look like they're a bunch of kids right now. Because some of them will try to act pretty grown. It's like, y'all still 15, man. It is like for once, you see them, all laughing and joking with each other and pushing each other in the pool, splashing each other, talking and just whatever. And when you see that, it's like, okay, now y'all are starting to act like real brothers. That's what's going to lead to our success on the court. So when you kind of figure all that stuff out, and then you move the ball well, I think that's what really leads to that cohesion and just moving up to kind of where you can win and also have a great team dynamic. Both of those things go hand in hand for sure, in my opinion.
But what it sounds like is just super, super important though, as a coach, especially if you're bringing guys together who might not know each other. Like, you really got to spend some time working on that, but also understand that it's also going to take time. So I think it sounds like there's a big patience element where, as a coach, I would love to just snap my fingers, like, okay, we had that one practice, y'all better be like good with each other now. But there's bumps along the way that go with it, which I imagine is like part of how it goes. But you have to kind of have to keep working on it, right? It sounds like that's what you did. Just kind of keep working on the team element, keep working on it. You might not see it the first, second, in the third game. It might take all the way to the very end, but then it's like, all right, we got it, because you stuck with it, you believed in it, sort of thing.
Yes, sir, man. Like everything for sure takes time, and that's kind of one of the battles with AAU, as we talked about earlier, is having that limited practice time and this and that. And then, we had one kid that joined up just for the last bit of July. And so here we are. We've had this team since April, and we had one guy leave, and one guy got hurt. So now we're bringing in this new guy, and it's kind of like, okay, you don't gotta start over, but it's like, all right, we gotta acclimate him to this team culture pretty quickly. So he starts to fit in, and then you also gotta manage the attitudes and everything of, okay, well, I mean, especially with boys, we're all egotistical. Oh man, here's this new guy. Now I got to compete with minutes for this dude with this and this. You got to manage that heavy in AAU.
Yeah, I mean, somebody comes in, and if you don't have the right culture, right, that could be seen as like a threat almost. Some new guy coming down, right? Like, there's only so many minutes to go around. Like, why is this guy here? Who's he gonna be taking time from? Like, he's an outsider, sort of thing. So, especially imagine with all the recruiting and all that going on, people just coming by in and out all the time. Like, gotta have good chemistry.
You'll have some kids come to a practice and then they're never there for the rest of the summer, So
oh man,
it could be kind of crazy a lot of the time.
That is wild. In general, I mean, you have a lot of experience out there in the AAU world. So when you think about just being a successful AAU coach, when you kind of define what success means to you when you're at these showcases, when you're at these live events, when you are done with one of these weekends and done with one of these tournaments, at what point do you look back on it and think to yourself as a coach, okay, that was a successful, tournament, or that was a successful weekend? How do you kind of define that?
So looks different for every group, but how I kind of figure it, I'll bring up the tournament in Nebraska earlier this summer. So up until this point, we hadn't seen too much success with my 15s. We had the weekend before, I think we went 0-4. And so we had gone 1-3 the weekend before that one. And so there's a lot of frustration building up, of course. And so, but I tried to flip that into motivation for them. And so we go up to Nebraska. And again, this just has so much to do with the events you're at. We go up to Nebraska, and it's our first, it's a circuit called Next Pro. It's our first Next Pro event. And so first game, I've stressed to them, we really got to come out with some fire. Like, can't be lackadaisical. We know what we're here to do. It's time to start on a good note. And so kids get out there and they're playing hard. And like I said, I'm a high energy coach, and had the other 15s coach on the bench with me. He's also another really high energy guy. So my point guard's killing. He's getting active on defense. He's getting some steals. He's scoring, shooting the ball, getting everybody else involved. He's looking really good. I'd say this is probably the second best tournament he played. So he's looking really good. The guy that does the write-ups for Next Pro comes up to me and he's like, "What's his name?" So I tell him his name. We go on, we play the game, we win. I look on Twitter later on, and he says, "Loving the first tweet that he said was loving the energy from the Missouri Flight coaches right now, praising their players after every score, da 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 da." So starts with your energy first off, and then from there, kids just kind of got to perform. At least to I'm getting off track, man.
No, you gotta, like you mentioned, you gotta come, and I mean, you get recognized. When you think about being successful, it's like, hey, somebody recognized, the passion and energy that I got for this, and it's kind of radiated. Like, people kind of see like the enthusiasm around like the team and the program itself.
Yeah, cool. So they see that, and then you just kind of try to carry that energy, and so he got a write up. My point guard got a write up that game, and then my shooting guard also had 24 points that game. So it starts. There's a lot with the kids' performance. Starts with the events, but when they're performing well, and everybody's gelling, and we've really just come with a locked in mindset of what we need to do and accomplish. Like, we went 2-2 that weekend, but we played really hard. Everybody just starts to come to your games after a little bit. And so kids ended up getting, I had 4 players and I only had 6 that weekend. So I had 4 out of 6 players get write-ups that weekend. And I think just kind of looking at that, that's where that success, you can really tell if you had a successful weekend. It's not always determined by the record, but if you come up with a couple wins, and then you have some kids that got put online, I think that's really what I would judge a successful weekend on. Now, at the 14U level, where we're not winning as many games, I just look at it as, did they compete the whole time? If I can see that they competed the entire time, and maybe we came out with a win that we shouldn't have got because we played super hard, that's a dub. And then my kids grow from that. And then even looking further down the line, I think the main place where you really see the success and fruition is in their school ball play. So did these AAU events, toughen them up, sharpen their skills, have them play against some tougher competition that they'll see so that they can be successful at that school ball level.
How involved are you with what they're doing in school ball? Do you check up on them? Do you figure out like what they got going on there? What's kind of your level of involvement in once those guys are out there in the school ball season?
So I try to make it to all my AAU guys' games at their respective schools, at least a couple of them. Make sure, I'm not just, showing up to the game and leaving, but, make sure that they see I'm there, talk to them about, what I think, listen and hear what they're thinking about school ball, because a lot of the time it'll be completely different than what you see.
Yeah.
Especially when kids are fighting for that varsity level and varsity competition spot. They may think that stuff's not going too well, but it's like, bro, you're a freshman getting to start JV. Everything is all right. So I kind of try to pop in on them and keep their heads up if stuff's going down, not build them up too much if stuff's going well, and then also stay active with them in my skills training type of deal. So you want to make sure a lot of kids will stop working out and doing this and that when they're in school ball, but you got to make sure that they're still getting a couple workouts in or, doing that various thing to keep their skills up during the school season. So I try to stay pretty involved.
And when you think about, I'm just curious, I'm getting myself a little bit off track, but I'm always curious about what this looks like. When you see what they're running in their school ball, are they doing things like dribble drive? Do you see them kind of used or maximize their skill set or doing some of the things that you want to do? Do you find there's a big disconnect? I know it's completely different than location to location, but I'm just curious what when you see your guys running out there in school ball, what sort of system you see that they're being put in, or what different types of systems they're in?
So the most famous thing up in Southwest Missouri is the 5-out motion. And so growing up playing in it, I'm not a motion type of guy. I'm a
Okay,
as a skills trainer, before I'm a skills trainer as a player, I love to dribble, not over dribble, but I'm not the guy that really likes to pass, cut, and screen. Now, of course, I have those abilities through having to adjust, but it's definitely completely different. And then what you see in college, what I learned this year playing at Baptist Bible, is that it's a lot different as well. Like you'll see a lot more dribble drive and horns. Horns is huge. I never saw horns at all in high school, but you'll see I run a lot of horns in AAU, and then dribble drive is the main thing. But for the most part, it's just a lot of 5-out motion, and then teams tend to play through their best players and their veterans. You see a lot less motion from them guys that have earned their right over the years, but you got a lot of fundamental players down here.
To kind of take things back in terms of, I'm always curious about the skill development aspect of things as we start to wrap up here in a little bit. When you get guys coming into your program and you're thinking like, okay, I know that these guys want to be seen. I know that these guys want to get the recognition and get out there when we go to these events. What are some things that you find yourself that you have to clean up or you have to coach or things that maybe were under taught to them when they were younger? What are some big like points of emphasis that you work on to kind of get your players to that next level of performance?
Well, I use my skills training background pretty heavily when it comes to those things. So I'm really big on Michael Lancaster and the I'm Possible stuff. We don't do as many of the methods that he uses just because I don't have a whole bunch of the tools, but really big on a lot of the stuff I've learned from him in terms of just thinking outside the box. And that's where I think a lot of school coaches kind of fall short, is that we're still trying to coach. This is why I don't like 5-out. We're still trying to coach a modern style of the game in a way that it was played, 20 years ago. And so kind of just trying to break down a lot of those things, You know, a lot of kids don't jump off the same foot that they shoot the layup with, or so same foot, same hand finishes, like just for example. And so I got to get them out of that habit so they have another skill that they can actually use against people that are better. You know, that's kind of just giving them as many of those things as I can in a short amount of time, and also things that will also flow within the offense. So that's kind of where that comes into play. But just really getting outside of the box, because and you'll hear this a lot of the time. You know, you got kids who their school ball coach tells them not to shoot. They come to me, I can't have that.
It's like, you better be shooting.
You know, it's like that's not going. We all have to be able to shoot. If you're not shooting, then I got one player that they know they don't have to respect. You know, so got to make sure that everybody can be basketball players and use all the tools necessary. So that's again another reason why I love the dribble drive, is because it's predicated on skills and principles instead of, okay, you do this, you do this. You know, that's kind of the bridge that I gap over there.
What's the shooting technique for your younger guys? Do you face the epidemic of kids that are way too young shooting from outside, or they being taught appropriately well? What do you find yourself having to do with shooting form when you get, especially with the younger group?
Man, so that with shooting, thank God for my guy Mike Dunn, because he was kind enough to send me a little template of one of his shooting programs. And so as a coach, I can't really do too much, especially with limited time. So we only got about 2 hours. You know, you shoot how you shoot right now, but I can give you a little template and examples of how it should start to look. So you really got to put the trust in the kids at that point. But you know, if they're shooting the ball, for the most part, they're going to shoot how they're going to shoot. I don't try to change it too much. If they want me to change their shot, they're going to have to come to me in a skills training environment, because we got to focus on, you know, you learn how to pass or where the help came from a lot of the time before we're worried about, you know, how your shot looks. And if it goes in, it goes in for right now. We just kind of got to live with it.
And I mean, that's just part of one of the big challenges you got with in the AAU setting, is time is just so limited that you got to instill, right, all these other things, that there's some aspects of the game where it's like you can't, as you mentioned, and it makes a lot of sense when you mention it, like you're not going to be able to make concrete permanent changes to like somebody's shot in 2 hours, you know, every week, like especially if they're not constantly working on it or constantly like working on that technique all the time. Like it's just not going to stick with them, and they're just going to go back to their old habits, right?
Right. And we get a lot of shots up. You know, I spend probably the first almost hour most of the time, you know, just doing a lot of drive and kick stuff and picking pops and you know, pass it here and relocate here, just so that we can instill those concepts, but also get a lot of shot reps up. And that's why my 15s was pretty successful, is because they had a lot of guys that already had very, very good form. So that was more beneficial to them. We're getting up shots, and then we get to play for an hour. You know, we're always kind of staying in that mode. My 14s with guys that don't have as good shot form, you know, oh man, I got one player. He earned his right to shoot threes at the beginning of the year. Made about 4 or 5 of them straight in a scrimmage. And so it's like, okay, I can't tell you not to shoot. But then when we get in them games, he hasn't hit one in a long time.
Drought coming, huh?
Yeah, you know, so it's like I want to, and during those times, you know, when I see him miss a shot, I'll throw in that little sprinkle of, hey, you need to do this with your arms, or your guide hand was off here. You need to make sure it's here and stays here, or something like that. I'll throw in little tidbits, and then like you said, like I said earlier, it's a lot left to them to not go back to those old habits and try to trust you in what you're saying, and then do the work outside of practice for the other bulk of that.
Before we hit our concluding segment, I did want to ask, we spent a lot talking about offense, but if you want to if your guys want to stand out on the defensive side, are there things, points of emphasis that you really work on with defense? I know a ton of it is effort and just, just being there and working hard, but are there any specific things that you work on with your guys, to talk to your guys about defensively, to really make sure that they're the best defender they can be?
So we're big dribble drive on offense. I'm huge on no middle, no paint on defense. So biggest thing, and a lot of the time that'll put you, sometimes that'll put you in a bad position. But one thing that I really try to emphasize, we do a whole bunch of live play. And so I'm not too big on the stationary shell. Of course that's good for like the first, couple weeks of learning where you need to be and being in your spot, whatnot. But like you said, defense is a lot of effort. And at the end of the day, I could do a whole bunch of technical talk of, you got to slide this way, or you got to do this and this, or, give a lot of little tips and tricks. And I do that. But at the same time, it comes down to the kid's effort most of the time. I had one kid, my best shooter on my team. He was like, "Coach, what can I do better?" Earlier on in the year, and I'm like, Blake, you got to learn how to guard. And ever since then, he's just put more effort and pride into his defense. And at the end of the day, it'll lead to stops just through the effort part. There's techniques to it. I think that comes more in a sports performance environment. As I've kind of learned, so I had an injury last year. Tore my ACL and both my meniscus. So biggest thing coming back was trying to figure out how to get that lateral movement back. And now I feel I'm better than ever at that lateral movement thing. But that didn't come from, me playing a lot of basketball. That came from me playing basketball and then getting into this sports performance environment.
Sure.
Where we did a whole bunch of, resistance work and lateral movement work and just all sorts of things, talking about how defense works with my sports performance trainer. That did a lot for me. But the biggest thing is just having confidence in the fact that you can guard, going out there and trying your best. If you get beat, you get beat sometimes. You gotta tell them to live with that. And then you just stress from that point, I just stress the help. A big problem we had this year, we weren't early in help at all a lot of the time. I say 2 feet outside. If I'm gonna go no middle and I'm forcing you in the baseline, your help better be 2 feet outside the baseline or outside the blocks.
Yeah.
But especially when it's that higher level and you got guys that'll get up on you a little bit. If you want to meet them in the paint, it's over. So,
I like that you mentioned the part about like telling your guys mentally, like, hey, you're gonna get beat. Like that's just, it is what it is. Like you can't not try because you're afraid of the fact that somebody might get the best of you or something like that. Like that's just kind of how it goes. But I feel like it's almost even more important like how you react afterwards. And like, what does that, say about you as a player that when somebody beats you, are you still going to go after them just as hard and, maybe make some adjustments in how you guard them, but are you still going to, just be willing to take that chance again that you might beat again, just because, you still got to like work hard on defense, even if, things happen. And like I said, you get beat, but that's not an excuse to just sort of not do anything. Cause that'll get you noticed real quick in the
right. In the wrong way, man. Coaches want to see somebody try to recover. They don't, ain't nobody really. I tell kids this all the time. You don't get no points for ankle breakers. Like that. That's worth no points.
Yeah.
Get back up and keep on trying.
Yeah.
And then trust. If you do get beat, trust in your brothers that they'll have your help. And then know that I'm gonna take them out or I'm gonna yell at them if they wasn't to help.
Team defense. Yeah.
You're not the one that's gonna get patronized a lot of the time for getting beat, especially if you gave that effort. Now, definitely have had to have the conversation where it's like we can't just rely on help. y'all have to actually defend the ball first.
That's funny.
So,
Yeah. You actually got to do your part too, and then the help is there as well. There's a certain expectation that some defense is playing first before like there's help there. That's funny. Awesome, Coach. To wrap up, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. So go ahead and start with this first one. Thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
man, so earlier this year, like I said, point guard was having trouble trusting people, and then I brought on another player who had the same kind of issue, and they play school ball together, so they clicked up pretty heavy. And really, they was having a lot of success at one point in time. I had to kind of reel them back in and bring them back down to earth because it's like we haven't reached the mountaintop yet, and I think that's definitely just something that every coach could take, because I think definitely see a lot of not quote unquote favoritism, but I don't know what else you could call it. Best players get away with a lot of stuff that other players don't.
Yeah.
But I think it's just coaches. We can't really let that happen. Gotta make sure that the team stays the team. Everybody trusts each other, and that you really bring kids up as brothers first and foremost. Once I had made that change and talked to them about that, we started to really actually see what we were trying to see the whole time. And you wouldn't have thought that my two best players were kind of dragging us down that much in that way because of these things. And it didn't have nothing to do with on the court. It was really just a trust thing. Really just okay, these are different kids. We don't play with them in school ball. We haven't played with them in the past. Just having to teach them as brothers, and that was definitely something that I learned this year. I think a lot of people could take that and run with it as well.
No, I like that a lot. There's kind of everyone's got to be together, right? Everyone's got to trust each other. Everyone's got to be a team and everything like that. That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool. To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest what I kind of call a 60-second soapbox, but feel free to go longer. Your platform to get out like a final idea, a final message, a closing thought, just something that you just kind of want to leave the listeners with. So I'm just going to kind of open it up to you, and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
Man, so first off, just want to say thank you again, Coach, for having me, man. This has been awesome. Biggest thing on my 60-second soapbox, I think as coaches, and I'm biased because I'm a skills trainer, but I think as coaches, we really have to focus more on getting outside the box and skill developing in a more modern way, more modern sense. There's a lot of old school ways, and old school works still, but the game is just changing. I think everybody needs to kind of evolve with the game. It's know that it's okay to kind of throw away a lot of the stuff that you were doing before, or to coach differently than you were coached. I think that's kind of huge, and that's something that definitely helped me in my journey as a coach. When I started out trying to coach how my coaches was coaching me, I didn't have as much success. And it was also harder when I started, doing my own research, and then bringing in stuff that I like, stuff that I really thought was beneficial, stuff that I thought that could help out. And then also being a sponge from other coaches. That's where I've kind of seen a lot of my success in my career. And I mean, it's brought me pretty far as skills training and stuff goes. So I've been hired on as a middle school assistant just because of my ability to develop. And I think that's kind of huge because I don't do any of the old school things, So I think that's probably the biggest thing I could say. Just get outside the box and don't be afraid to try anything new. And also, man, just gotta love the kids genuinely, man. There could be coaches in it for the wrong reason and stuff like that, or if you was in it for the right reasons but starting to kind of veer off, never forget that we in it for the kids first and foremost. And I think if you keep your focus on that, no matter what, you'll be successful. So
awesome. That was really well put, really well said. And I love the closing thought, be there for the kids. And as you mentioned before, like the game's always changing. So it only makes sense that we as coaches kind of change and stay up to date and learn new ways to do things as well. So
yes, sir, man.
That is a lot. Coach Dixon, I want to thank you for spending some time talking about your coaching, your busy schedule, AAU, the work skills trainer, how you help your players be seen and put them in the best light. I know you've been really busy, so hopefully you enjoy this upcoming weekend. And thank you so much for sharing your insights, and best of luck going forward, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.